Welcome to the course module of communication engineering. So in the last lecture, we have already seen the quantization process in which I have explained you what is uniform quantization. So in the today's lecture, we are going to see what is non-uniform quantization and what is pulse code modulation. So first of all, we try to understand what is non-uniform quantization. So here, if you remember, I told you that in the case of uniform quantization, the step size delta that we have chosen, that step size was a constant. Okay. So whenever the step size delta that we have taken is a constant, then it can be regarded as a uniform quantization. Okay, because there is a finite differences between the two levels, and all these differences will be equally spaced. Okay, but in the case of non-uniform quantization, okay, if we talk about the non-uniform quantization, then you try to just see this particular picture. Okay, so let us suppose we have any message signal which is shown like this. Okay, so it is having a certain variations in the message signal. At this point here, we can see that in this particular segment, this signal is making an excursion between these 2 points. Okay, so this dynamic range is actually very small as compared to this particular segment, in which the dynamic variation or the range of excursion of the message signal is very large in this particular segment. So basically in this message signal, what we can see is basically it is consist of two segments. The one segment in which the signal variation is or the range of the signal voltage variation is very small as compared to the other segment. So basically what happens is, if we want to do the quantization, okay, so either we can take this as a dynamic range of the message signal, because this is the maximum excursion that we are getting in this particular segment. Okay, so if we consider this as the dynamic range of the signal, then accordingly to get the minimum quantization error, we have to select the step size appropriately, so that the quantization error will be small. As I already explained you that the quantization error is actually directly proportional to the step size. So whenever the step size is large, then obviously the quantization error is going to be large. So if we consider this as the dynamic range of the message signal, at this point, what we need to have is we need to have a large number of finite levels. Okay, we need to have a finite levels in large numbers. That will only give you the small step size. If you remember, I explained you that the number of finite levels L that we have defined is equals to 2mp divided by step size delta. So it means that to have a small delta, okay, if the dynamic range 2mp is a constant, then obviously we need to have a large number of finite levels. Okay, and because of that, we are going to get the small value of delta, and that leads to a small value of the quantization error. So now, if we talk about practical situations, okay, basically, if we talk about the human voice signal, then you will find that in most of the time, if you plot the human voice signal, you will find that the excursion of the human voice signal is actually having a low variations. Okay, like this particular segment, you will find that it is having a variation in the amplitude which is very low, and very high variation in the amplitude rarely occurs. Okay, it means that only low variation predominates in the case of speech signal, but the high variation, okay, the variation in the amplitude which is very large occurs rarely in the case of speech signal. So if you consider that, if we talk about the speech signal, and if we consider this rarely occurring segment, okay, let us suppose if this is our rarely occurring segment which is having a large excursion in the message signal, if we consider this to be a dynamic range, then if we divide a large number of finite levels, then what we can understand is that most of the level cannot be used, or it can be rarely used because of the rare occurrence of this particular large segment. So what I'm trying to say is that in the practically occurring speech signals, the variation of the dynamic range of the speech signal is most of the time is very small. Okay, like in this particular segment that we have shown, which is very small. and this type of segment occurs very rarely, and therefore we need to have a particular quantization scheme in which the step size should not be a constant. For example, if we take a very large step size, okay, if we consider this as a dynamic range, okay, and accordingly if we make a large step size, okay, that time what will happen is that large step size may not be able to properly track the variation, these small variations in the space signals, okay. But if similarly if we consider this to be a means dynamic range, and if we make the step size very small, okay, at that time most of the step size or the levels, finite levels that we will define, that will not be used because this type of segment will occur very rarely, okay. And therefore what we need to have is we need to have a non-uniform quantization scheme in which what we have to do is whenever the speech signal is having a low variation, okay, its a range of variation in the amplitude is very small, that time we need to take a very small quantization levels, okay. The step size should be very small so that these small variations can be tracked very easily. But if you compare, whenever this rarely occurring segment occurs in the speech signal, a large dynamic range comes, at that time the step size should be also large, okay, to have the same signal to noise ratio, okay, signal to quantization noise ratio, to maintain the same signal to quantization noise ratio, so that this can be again tracked, okay. So basically what we need to have is we need to have small step size whenever there is a small variation in the amplitude, and whenever it is a very large amplitude occurs like this, then we need to have a large step size to maintain the same signal to quantization noise ratio. So basically whenever the step size that we are talking about, if it is not a constant, okay, if it is varying based on the amplitude of the message signal, then this is referred as the non-uniform quantization. So generally to perform a non-uniform quantization, either we can directly perform this particular thing, like we will take the message signal and then we can go on choosing or doing the non-quantization by taking the variable step size, okay, by having a particular circuitry that will be able to judge what is the input message signal. Based on the magnitude of the message signal, the step size of the quantizer will be decided. Or otherwise, generally what we perform is for the non-uniform quantization is, first of all we take a signal, okay, we first consider a message signal, and then this message signal has to be passed through a compressor circuit, okay. So this is our compressor circuit, okay, characteristics. It is the characteristic of the compressor circuit. So first of all what we perform is, first we pass the signal through a compressor circuit with a particular characteristics, and then after passing through the compressor circuit, the output of the compressor can be passed through a uniform quantizer, okay. So again the output will be a non-uniform quantization that we can see directly from this picture. So what will happen is, first of all try to understand, we have to apply the compressor, we have to apply the message signal to a compressor. Let us suppose that this particular axis denotes the like input magnitude of the message signal. This is actually a normalized input signal that we have shown, like this is the maximum value of the message signal that we can got, and this is the current value of the message signal M, okay. So basically, if you see when this magnitude of the message signal is increasing, here you can see that whenever there is a small variation, okay, a small increment in the message signal, where there is a small increment in the message signal, the corresponding increment in the output of the compressor, you can find it is large, okay. This increment is large because here it is a small increment in the input signal. There is a corresponding large increment in the output of the compressor that we can found. Again, if you see here, this increment is like delta x, this is the increment, then the same increment you will also find in the output of the compressor. But if you see this increment, okay, here you can find that this increment is more whenever the signal is becoming large, okay, whenever the input message signals amplitude increasing, okay, whenever the increment is large, here you can find that the increment in the output of the compressor is small, okay, as compared to the increment in the input of the message signal. So you try to first understand this characteristics. You can find that here it is a non-uniform increment in the input magnitude you can find. Okay, onto this particular x-axis, we can see that these increments are non-uniform. Okay, but here you can find that these increments are actually uniform. Okay, you will find that this compressor is designed in such a way that if you see this again here, you just try to understand this. Here this increment between the two vertical lines is very small, but the same increment in the y-axis, if you find this increment is means compared to this increment is large. Okay, compared to this increment. Similarly, at this point you will find that whatever be the increment at this point, a similar increment you will find in this particular output of the compressor. But here if you see, when the increment is large, okay, this increment is large or this increment is large, the corresponding increment in the output of the compressor is small. Okay, again here you can see that this is the increment in the signal. So here the increment is very small as compared to the increment in the input signal. So what we are trying to do is we are actually compressing the signal. Whenever the magnitude of the signal is large, the output of the compressor will be low. Whenever the input signal is low, the output of the compressor will be large. Okay, and this way we are actually doing the compression of the message signal. Okay, which is having a large dynamic range. It is having a small segments. It is having a large segments. Okay, so this way we are first performing the compression of the message signal. Once we perform the compression of the message signal, this signal has to be passed through a uniform quantizer. So once we pass through the uniform quantizer, for example, in this case, we have the uniform quantizer here, we have the compressor circuit. So this will be quantized uniformly. Okay, it will be quantized uniformly. So it is equivalent to perform a non-uniform quantization, because here we have already performed the compression of the message signal, and therefore this even the non-uniform here we are performing the uniform quantization. It is equivalent to performing the non-uniform quantization, because we have already performed the compression of the message signal. So this way we actually perform the non-uniform quantization. Okay, so remember that this non-uniform quantization is actually used, okay, in various countries. We are having some commercial technique by which we perform this non-uniform quantization. So based on the expander characteristics, okay, the way we are the way we are doing the compression, okay, we are having two different compression technique that is prevalent in this particular PCM means transmission of the signals. Okay, so basically we are having two different compression techniques, which is called as the A law technique, and another one is called as the mu law technique. Okay, so basically what happens is you must be wondering that how it can be demodulated again. So basically once we perform this compression, after the compression we perform the uniform quantization, then after doing the uniform quantization, when the signal will be received at the receiver side, then there should be a expander circuit, okay, whose characteristics will be the complementary characteristics of this particular compressor. Okay, or you can say whatever the action we have performed in the compressor, some inverse action has to be performed at the receiver side in the expander circuit, and therefore we can restore back the original message signal. So this is what we actually perform, and these two operations together, like compression followed by the expansion, is called as the companding of the signal. Okay, compression and expanding of the signal together is called as the companding. Okay, you remember that the terminology companding is performed, okay, in case of the non-uniform quantization of the signals, right? So you remember that when we transmit a voice signal, I have already taken the example of the speech signal only. So because of the practical speech signals, this non-uniform quantization is necessary, because most of the time this rarely occurring large segment is actually, these levels are not utilized while transmitting the signal, and therefore we are generally going for the non-uniform quantization of the signal. So please try to say this. One more point that you have to remember is that if you see here in these characteristics of the quantizer, you can see that onto this x-axis I have defined the inputs. Okay, these are the inputs of the quantizer, and these are the output of the quantizers. Okay, so you please remember that. Okay, here I have just taken, these are the inputs because these are the output of the compressor. So these levels has to be quantized. Okay, so these levels has to be quantized. So here it will be quantized, and because these levels are uniformly distributed, we can have a uniform quantizer to quantize these levels. Okay, and therefore we can get the corresponding quantized output that will be encoded, and then it will be further transmitted. So now you can see this, there is a law compression and there are mu law compression. So these are the compression techniques. We have shown it for the positive value of the magnitude of our message signal. The similar characteristics you can also draw in the third quadrant for the negative value of the message signals. Generally, whatever the compression law that we are using, that will be having a odd symmetry around the our y-axis, so that you remember. So this is the basic law that we generally used for A law compression, and this is our mu law compression. I'm not going into the detail of this. Okay, so you can directly understand it is an empirical formula. Okay, you try to understand that it is an empirical way to define this particular A law compression or a mu law compression. So basically, we need to have this type of characteristics in which initially whenever the input signal is small, there will be a large variation in the output, and whenever the input signal is large, there should be a small variation in the output. So this type of compression we have to use. In our India, we are using the A-law compression technique for transmission of the PCM systems, PCM signals, okay, with A equals to 87.56. You remember that whenever A equals to 1, it is something like having a linear characteristics, okay, and that time the compression is actually not done. Okay, so similarly here it is mu equals to 0 is nothing but equals to a linear characteristics. So again at this particular point we are not performing any compression. Okay, so that you remember. So in America they are using this mu law compression. Okay, and in India we are using the A law compression. So I hope this non-uniform quantization is must be clear. You try to go through this expression. Okay, the same expression has been plotted here. Okay, it has been plotted here. I'm not going into the detail of this. Okay, it is not required at in the present discussion. Fine. So now I can start another topic, which is very important topic, is our pulse code modulation. So now we have already seen that how this analog signal can be converted into the digital signal. Okay, so we have already seen it to convert the analog signals, which is occupying the like infinite number of samples, okay, in between the two finite levels, okay, or you can say that between the two excursion of the signals, it is taking the infinite points because it is the analog signals. I have already explained you that the analog signals, to convert the analog signals into digital signals, we need to perform the two steps. The steps are is to first we need to do the time discretization by performing the sampling of the signal, and the second one is the amplitude discretization by performing the quantization of the signal. So now we can discuss about the one of the important, a very important class of modulation technique, which is known as the pulse code modulation. So let's see how this pulse code modulation is actually performed. So we have already seen the several steps. For example, we have to take the source of continuous time as a signal. Any source we have to take. Okay, it may be a voice signal, it may be some other signals. Okay, it may be some music signals. Okay, so first of all, we need to take the source of a continuous time message signal. And then first of all, the first thing that we have to do with this signal is to first we have to pass it through a low pass filter, whose function is to band limit the message signal. Okay, whatever be the message signal, first we need to filter out the high frequency component, and we have to just retain those frequency components that will be significant to us. Okay, so let us suppose if we want to transmit a voice signal, then we can reject all the higher frequency component. For example, I can have a low pass filter with cutoff frequency equals to 5 kilohertz, so that this output of the low pass filter will only having a frequency maximum up to 5 kilohertz. So once we are band limiting these signals, then we can design a sampler, because we know that for the sampling purpose we need to follow the Nyquist criteria for the sampling, in which we need to take the sampling frequency that should be greater than or equals to 2 into twice of the maximum frequency available in the message signal. So if it is, let us say if it is 5 kilohertz, then the sampling frequency should be greater than 10 kilohertz. Okay, so that will be appropriate, so that from the sampled signal it is possible to recover back the original message signal. Otherwise it is not possible. So what is the function of the low pass filter? To band limit the message signal, and then this band limited message signal has to be passed through a sampler, and after passing through the sampling we have to perform the sampling. Okay, we have to time discretize it. Okay, and then this discretized signal in time should be passed through a quantizer. Okay, so this quantizer will basically quantize the signal. Okay, whatever be the infinite number of levels that we got, that has to be converted into the finite levels. Okay, now after having the quantized signal, the next step that we need to perform is to we have to encode the quantized levels. Okay, we need to encode the quantized level. So what we mean to say the quantized encoding of the quantized level? So just you try to see from this particular picture. So let us suppose we are having a message signal which is defined like this, and that this is our analog signal, analog message signal, a band limited analog message signal. And if we perform the first the sampling and followed by the quantization. So for example, if we have performed the sampling, okay, let us say we have taken this particular sample. If we talk about this particular sample, then you can see that this particular sample that we got at this point is its magnitude is somewhere around minus 0.25. You can see that the sampled value of this particular analog signal at this point. So this is the sampled value. Now, after doing the sampling, we need to quantize this particular level. So let us say that our next quantization level, okay, nearest to this is minus 0.5. So you remember that these are the quantization levels that we have been noted here. Okay, these are the quantization levels like minus 0.5, 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and so on. Okay, so these are the different quantization levels that we have defined. So now after doing this sampling, and the sample value that we have got is minus 0.25. So based on the quantizer characteristics, this minus 0.25 should be quantized to a value of minus 0.5, because this is the nearest quantization level. So this will be quantized to minus 0.5. Similarly, if you see at this point, this quantization, this sampled value that we got is equals to 3.1. So its nearest quantized level is 3.5. So it has to be brought to 3.5. Similarly, here we are getting this sampled value equals to 1.5. Okay, it is exactly coming at the quantized level. So this value will be remain same, and it will be quantized at the level of 1.5. Similarly, again, here you can see it is minus 2.4. So the nearest quantization level is minus 2.5, and so on. So this way we are actually first performing the quantized values. Okay. First of all, we perform the sampling, and then we are quantizing the sample value to a quantized levels. Okay. Predefined quantized levels. So once we got this quantized levels, now what we can perform is, for example, in this case, we are having the different quantization level. If we started with the minus 3.5, then here you can count how many quantization level that we have. So first of all, this is the first quantization level: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so there are total 8 quantization levels that we have defined in this case. So we can name them. Okay, we can give a code number to these quantization levels. Okay, we can give this name to this particular quantization level. For example, the first quantization level can be denoted by 0. Okay, so this is the first quantization level denoted by 0. So this is our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So altogether we are having total 8 quantization levels. So these are the different code numbers. So what we can have is, once we have defined the quantization value, we can give them a quantization level code numbers. Okay, we can define this code numbers. So basically minus 0.5 is our fourth quantization level. You can see that minus 0.5. So here it is first, second, third, and this is our fourth quantization level. So corresponding to this, we are having the code number equals to 3. So I can write this code number equals to 3. Similarly, for 3.5, this code number is 7. 1.5, this code number is 5, 1, and 0. Okay. So now what we can do is, for this particular code number, which is defined in the decimal number systems, okay, what I can do is I can write the corresponding binary codes. For example, here the 3 can be represented by a binary code of 0, 1, 1. You remember that how many quantization levels that we have defined? So we have defined the quantization levels, total number of quantization level is equals to 8. So let us suppose that if we want to code this code number into a form of means binary form. Okay, we want to convert this decimal numbers into the binary form. Okay, you remember that for transmission of the any digital signals, there is no need of that. We can also take the binary signal. We can take some other format also. Okay, like we can also take the hexadecimal system, we can also take the octal system. Okay, but you remember that if we taking the binary system, okay, if we take the this bits into consideration, okay, only binary coding if we take, okay, then transmission or implementation of these systems will be very easy as compared to the octal system or the hexadecimal systems. That is the advantage of the binary system. It is very simple to implement. Okay, so implementation will be very easy. So here you can see that the total number of levels that we are using is 8. So how many such binary numbers that we need to have to define these 8 levels? Obviously it is 2 to the power 3. Okay, so 2 to the power 3 will be giving you 8. So to define these 8 levels, we have to take 3 binary bits. Okay, suppose if it was like six levels, again we have to take 3 bits only, because by taking the 2 bits, the maximum number of possible combination is equals to 4. 2 to the power 2 is equals to 4. So only 4 combination can be defined by having the 2 bits, like 0 0 0 1 1 0 and 1 1. So that way we can only define 3 levels, 4 levels with the help of 2 bits. But with the help of 3 bits, we can define up to the 8 levels. So therefore, we have taken the 3-bit pattern here. Okay. So this code number is 3. So corresponding binary code should be 011, and then for 7 it is 111, then 5 it is 101, then 001 and 000. So this way, what we perform is, first we are taking the message signal, we are band limiting the signal, then we are performing the sampling. Okay, then we are doing the quantization, and after quantization we are doing the encoding process. Okay, so this all quantized value has to be converted into a binary codes. Okay, so once we have performed the quantization, once we have got this binary code, based on this binary code we need to produce the pulses. Okay, you remember that we need to perform we need to produce electrical pulses based on this pattern of the binary code that we have got. For example, it may be for 0, it may be the absence of pulse, and for 1 it may be a presence of pulse. Okay, so that we need to generate the pulses of particular bit duration. Okay, I will tell you this in the next slide. Okay, so you remember that once we have got the binary code, we need to generate the electrical pulses based on this particular binary code, which is also called as the line coding. Okay, or transmission coding. Okay, so that waveform we need to first generate, and then that waveform will be actually launched into the transmission line. Okay, or whatever the channel into which we want to send the signal. So first of all, this encoded signal has to be converted into the corresponding pulse. Okay, pulse waveforms, and those waveforms will be launched into the channel. Okay, that will be launched into the channel. So once it will be launched into the channel, it will be travel through the channel. It may be obviously it will be a wired channel, it may be optical fiber cables. Okay, it may be some wired copper cables. Okay, so that way it will be transmitting through the copper cables. Okay, and due to the transmission through the copper cables or the channel, there will be a loss of signal. There will be a certain generation of the noises that is going to affect the pulse shape. Okay, which is going to affect the pulse shape. So you remember that whenever any pulses, for example, we will be, suppose if we want to generate a signal, if it is corresponding to 0 1 0, then let us suppose we have generated this particular pattern. So once we have generated this particular pattern from the transmitter end of the PCM system, then this has to be launched to the channel. Okay, so once this signal starts traveling through the channel after a certain distance, obviously it is going to be attenuated. Okay, it is going to be attenuated, and a certain amount of noise is also going to be added through the channel during the transmission. Okay, so some noise is going to be added. Moreover, the channels are not ideal. Okay, the channels are not ideal. All the channels are having its own characteristics, and therefore it is going to produce a certain amount of delay, certain amount of amplitude distortion, certain amount of phase distortions. And therefore, generally what happens is the shape of the pulse that we have generated at the transmitter end is going to be deteriorated. Okay, and because of this distortion, this distorted waveform will be available. Okay, it is not a pure waveform. A certain distorted wave that we are going to get, a certain distorted pulses we are going to get. So basically, for further transmission of the this type of distorted pulses, we need to have a regenerative repeaters. Okay, regenerative repeaters. So what is the function of the regenerative repeaters? It will take a distorted PCM signal, okay, PCM signal you can say, or a pulse, a distorted pulses, and then again perform a certain operation to regenerate a clean pulses. Okay, this is the function of the regenerative repeater. I just try to explain you one important difference between the analog signal, analog communication and the digital communication is that in the case of analog signal, when we transmit any signal, then whenever it is traveling through a channel after a certain distance, obviously due to the attenuation, the power level of the message signal or the signal that we have sent is going to be reduced. So to amplify the signal, we at a particular distances, we need to have a particular repeaters. Okay, you remember that in the case of analog communication, we call it as a repeaters. And in the case of digital communication, the same thing is called as regenerative repeaters. What is the difference? In the repeaters, generally we have the amplifiers. Okay, so this amplifiers is actually amplifying the signal as well as the noise content available in the present with the signals. Okay, and therefore basically it is not eliminating the noise. Okay, you remember that it is not eliminating the noise. It is amplifying both the signals as well as the noise signal, and it is also adding a certain amount of noise, and therefore elimination of the noise is not possible in the case of repeaters. But in the case of digital communication, you will find that we are having a regenerative repeater whose inherent characteristics is that it can be eliminate the noise effect completely, and therefore a very high signal to noise ratio at the output of the or at the receiver side is possible. Okay, the same thing is not possible in the case of analog communication, and therefore the quality of the analog communication is much lesser than the quality of the digital communication. So you remember that in the case of regenerative repeater, it is eliminating the effect of the noise, and a clean pulses can be regenerated for further transmission. And even at the receiver side, we can have a very high signal to noise ratio, and therefore this received signal will having a very high quality. Okay, this is the basic difference in the digital communication and the analog communication. So you can see that after a certain distances, there will be a several regenerative repeaters based on the transmission cable. Okay, so how much distortion is actually occurring at how much distance? Based on that, at a particular distances, we need to have the regenerative repeaters. So after several regenerative repeaters, the signal, the final output will again go to the regeneration circuit, and then it will be go to the decoder circuit, then again a reconstruction filter, and finally the signal can be reconstructed back. Okay, so I have already explained you what is the encoding. After doing the encoding, all this bits has to be converted back to the quantized level. This is what the function of the decoder. Okay, so once it is converted to the quantized level, that value has to be passed through a reconstruction filter, and then the signal can be reconstructed back to the destination. Okay, and then it will means drive a particular transducer. If it is a voice signal, obviously we need to drive a speaker. If it is a video signal, we need to drive a particular cathode ray tubes. Okay, so this way we can got our signal. So now just to try to first understand that how this binary codes are actually converted into the pulse waveform. Okay, what kind of coding can be used? Okay, so there are several codes which is known as the line codes or transmission codes. So just let's see basically the electrical waveform representation of the binary codes that we have to see. So these binary codes or these codings are actually also called as the line coding or transmission coding, because after having the encoded signal, okay, binary bits, those bits has to be converted into the pulse form, and then it will be launched into the transmission line. Okay, transmission line, I mean to say that it is a channel. Okay, it may be a copper cable, it may be an optical fiber cable. Okay, so before launching it, we need to generate a particular pulse waveform. So first of all, you try to see this. Basically, we are having this four type of coding. One is like called as the unipolar format, polar format, then bipolar signaling, and the Manchester format. Okay, so these are the four basic encoding techniques that we are having. Okay, we have one more coding is called as differential encoding. Okay, I will talk about that technique later on. So first we will see what is this technique is. So first, if you can see this unipolar format, which is also called as the on-off signaling. So in this case, what we perform is whenever there is a bit equals to 1, a positive pulse of certain magnitude will be transmitted. Okay, whenever there is a bit equals to 1. If there is a zero bit is coming, then no pulse will be transmitted. So you try to see this into this particular picture. Okay, so this is our unipolar NRZ. You try to remember what is NRZ. It is a unipolar formatting, which is also called as on-off signaling. Okay, so what is NRZ? NRZ showing stands for non-return to zero. So here you can see that whenever there is a binary bit equals to 0, okay, there will be no pulse is going to be transmitted. No pulse is going to be transmitted. This is what I have written here. It is 0, no pulse will be transmitted. So no pulse is transmitted. Whenever there is a 1, then a positive pulse of a certain magnitude is going to be transmitted. Okay, it is going to be transmitted. Okay, then again there is another one. Okay, so another pulse will be transmitted. Okay, so this will be our transmitted means a positive pulse. Again, it is a bit equals to 0, so it will be no pulse will be transmitted. So whenever there is a binary bit equals to 1, we need to send a positive pulse of a certain magnitude. Whenever there is a 0, there is no pulse should be transmitted. So this way we are actually transmitting the signal. Try to understand what is non-return to 0. The meaning is that whatever be the pulse that we are transmitting, okay, for a binary bit equals to 1, that should be transmitted for the entire bit duration TB. Okay, it will be sent, it will be generated for the entire bit duration TB. Okay, I will be explaining you what is return to 0. Okay, what is return to 0? If it is return to 0, what would happen is just for the TB upon 2 duration, this bit should be transmitted and again it will be come back to 0. Okay, if it should have been return to 0 unipolar coding, in that case what will happen? This bit that whatever we are generating for the binary bit equals to 1, that has to be a duration of TB by 2. Okay, for the half of the bit duration it will be generated and then the signal will be come back to 0. Okay, it will be come back to 0. So here you can see that what is the width of the each pulses. What is the width of this pulses? It is equals to TB. Okay, the duration of this width duration of this particular pulse for binary bit equals to 1 is equals to TB, which is our bit duration. Okay, now if you see what is the polar format, in the case of polar format, 1 will be represented by a positive pulse and 0 will be represented by a negative pulse. Okay, so you try to see this polar NRZ, non-return to 0. So this is our 0 bit, so it will be represented by a negative pulses. Okay, so it will be it is represented by a negative pulse of magnitude minus a. Okay, for the duration of TB. Okay, again for 1 it is a positive side. Okay, so positive pulses will be transmitted. For a 0, again it will be a negative pulses will be transmitted. Similarly for 1, again it is positive. For 0, it will be negative pulses will be transmitted. To try to understand the difference, it is polar NRZ, means it is polar non-return to 0. Okay, and what is polar return to 0? You can see that in the case of polar return to 0, what will happen is if we are having a I think it is wrongly written. Okay, it is wrongly written. This is not the polar return to 0. So it may be something else. Okay, so we will see it what is this, but this is not polar return to 0. But one thing that you can see is I think this is unipolar return to 0. Okay, yes, it is unipolar return to 0. Just make it correct. It is unipolar return to 0. It is not polar return to 0. It is unipolar return to 0. So you can see that in the case of unipolar, for 0, no pulse is transmitted. So for 0, no pulse has been transmitted. Okay, no pulse has been transmitted. But whenever it is 1, there should be a positive pulse, but the duration of the positive pulse is TB by 2. You remember that for this one, for the duration of TB by 2, the pulse is transmitted, and then this again return to 0. It is come back to 0. Okay, this level is come back to 0, and up to this point, it is completing the 1 bit duration TB. So after a TB duration, when the next binary bit 1 comes, again it will be generating a positive pulse, and this duration of the positive pulse again for the half of the bit duration, which is TB by 2, and then again it will come back to 0. Okay, so again it is 0, and then because the next binary bit is 0, so again it will be 0, and then again due to this binary bit 1, a bit means a positive pulse is going to be generated for the duration of TB by 2, and again it will be written back to 0. Okay, so this is unipolar return to 0 signaling. Okay, so here you can see that why it is called as on-off signaling, because at certain point it is on, in which it is sending the pulses, and for the all binary zeros, it is in the off condition. So why it is called as the on off signaling. Similarly, we are having a bipolar signaling, okay, which is also known as pseudo ternary signaling or alternate mark inversion. Okay, so you try to see what is this bipolar signaling. So basically in the bipolar signaling, you remember it is actually generating a positive and the negative pulses are used alternatively for transmission of the binary bit 1. Okay, alternatively it is used for 1. Okay, and there will be no pulses used for the zeros. Okay, so what we perform is, for whenever it is a zero, there will be no pulse will be transmitted. Okay, no pulse will be transmitted. But whenever there is a 1, then there will be a pulse is going to be transmitted. Okay, so when there is a first pulse, first binary bit 1 comes, okay, that time a positive pulse of amplitude A will be sent, because it is a return to 0, so it has to be generated for the bit duration of TV by 2. So just for the TV by 2 it will be generated and it will be come back to 0. Okay, again after a TV duration, it is looking for the second binary bit, again it is 0, again it is 1. So it is going to generate a negative pulse this time, because last time it has generated a positive pulse. So whenever next one is come, okay, again it will be generating a negative pulse, okay, for the duration of TV by 2, and again it will come back to 0. Similarly, for the next one, it is going to generate a positive pulse. Okay, again for the next pulse, it is going to be generating a negative pulse. So this is what we have written here. It is positive and negative pulses are used alternatively for the transmission of ones. Okay, for 0 there will be no pulse that is going to be transmitted. Only we have to transmit the positive and the negative pulses for representing the binary bit equals to 1, and it has to be represented alternatively. Okay, so this is the alternate binary pulses has to be sent, okay, for binary bit equals to 1. So this way we have to generate a bipolar return to 0 signaling. Okay, so you can see basically in the case of bipolar return to 0, you will find that there are total 3 levels. Okay, it is not just having only one level or 2 levels, it is having 3 levels, because for the case of 0 transmission, okay, for binary bit 0, we have to send this 0. Okay, whenever it is a binary bit equals to 1 corresponding to 1, we have to send both level A, and also we have to send the level minus A. So this way we have to we are actually having 3 levels in the case of bipolar signaling. That's why it is also called as the pseudo ternary signaling. Okay, it is having 3 different levels. Okay, it's another name, you remember, it is alternate mark inversion. Okay, so what is this alternate mark inversion? Basically in the case of digital communication, you will find that this 1, okay, binary bit 1 is actually called as mark, and binary bit 0 is actually called as space. Okay, so whenever binary bit 1 is present, it is called as mark is present. Okay, it's another name is mark. Okay, and in case of 0, it is represented by space. Okay, so basically what we are doing is alternate mark inversion. Okay, alternate mark inversion means we are actually inverting alternatively the present of the presentation of the binary bit 1. Okay, one time we are sending the positive pulse and another time we are sending the negative pulse alternatively. Okay, alternatively. So this way we are actually transmitting the bipolar signaling. You remember that because of the absence of the DC signal in the spectrum of this particular bipolar signaling format. Okay, this is actually used for the commercial PCM telephone. Okay, in any pulse code modulation system, this particular line coding is actually used. Okay, similarly we are having a Manchester format. So what is this Manchester format, which is also known as biphase or split phase signaling? So basically in this case what happens is a symbol 1 is represented by transmitting a positive pulse, okay, for one half of the symbol duration, and followed by a negative pulse for the negative half of the symbol duration. And for 0, these 2 pulses are transmitted in the reverse order. So what we do is basically for symbol 0, first of all we need to send the negative pulse for the half bit duration, and then the positive pulse. And whenever there is a 1, first we have to send the positive pulse followed by the negative pulse. Okay, so you can see that for 1 we are sending first positive pulse for the half of the bit duration, and then we are sending the negative pulse. And again here you can see that it is a positive pulse for half of the bit duration, then again we are sending the negative pulse. But for 0, first we are sending the negative pulse for half of the duration, and then we are sending the positive pulse. So this way we are having the Manchester format. You remember that I will be discussing about the means bandwidth requirement of the pulse code modulation in my coming lectures. And that time I will be discussing about this bipolar signaling, because based on the bipolar signaling only we have to calculate the bandwidth of the pulse code modulation. And you remember whenever there is a questions or problems comes on the pulse code modulation, if it is not mentioned which particular line coding has been used for sending the encoded signal, you please by default consider it is a bipolar signaling. Okay, and if it is specifically mentioned a particular line coding scheme has been used, then you have to accordingly track your problem, and you have to solve the problem. To calculate the bit rate, you have to calculate the bandwidth requirement of the pulse code modulation. Okay, so that we will be discussing in the coming lectures. Okay, so in today's lecture I am just talking about one more point, is about the regenerative repeaters. So as I told you that the function of the regenerative repeater is to correct this distorted wave. Okay, whatever be the distorted wave that we are going to get due to the transmission of the signal, okay, due to the channel of the channel in which we are sending the signal. Okay, this distorted wave, first of all, this is the actually the system that we use for as a regenerative repeater. So what we have is we are having an amplifier or equalizer circuit first. So this signal has to be passed through first an amplifier or equalizer circuit, because due to the transmission of the signal will definitely get distorted, and as well as it is also get attenuated. So first we have to restore back the amplitude of the message signal so that a signal processing can be performed. Okay, so it has to be passed through an amplifier or equalizer circuit. Okay, the function of this equalizer circuit is to basically whatever be the effect the amplitude or the phase distortion that has been occurred due to the channel presence. Okay, that has to be compensated. Okay, so it will try to shape these pulses. Okay, it will try to shape these pulses. So this pulses is actually getting distorted. Okay, it is actually getting distorted. So they will try to first, this equalizer circuit will try to first shape these pulses, and from this shaped pulses a timing circuit will be actually realizing a time interval into which a pulse train can be generated. Okay, there should be a decision making circuit. I'm not going into the details of this circuit. Okay, how it works. Okay, just to try to understand the overall working. Okay, so what it does is actually it is generating a pulse train. Okay, it will be generating a pulse train, and the timing of the pulse train will be derived from the output of the equalized pulses. Okay, and then a decision making device that has to be used, and based on the predetermined threshold, this decision making device will means decide whether the transmitted signal was 1 or it will be a 0. So based on the threshold value, if the input incoming signal or the equalized pulses is having its magnitude greater than those threshold, it can be regarded as 1, and if it is less than that threshold, then it can be regarded as 0, and thereby it can regenerate a clean pulses. Okay, so you try to understand this is the function of the regenerative repeater. So we have to take a distorted wave, and it will be passed through a regenerative repeater, and then the regenerative repeater will be generating a clean pulses. Okay, it will be generating a clean pulses. So this is what the function of the regenerative repeater. So I hope this discussion you must be able to follow. If you have any further query, let me know with your comment in the comment box. Okay, so please feel free to drop your comment. Okay, so if you have any query, so thank you for watching this video. Stay connected with the channel for more updates. Thank you.